Hello and welcome to Rear Facing Toddlers. By law, all car seats have to meet one of the current EU regulations. There is one called R44 that was introduced in the early 1980s, and in 2013 a new one called R129 came out. R44 has recently been discontinued, so I thought I would make this video to explain the differences between the two. All car manufacturers that sell seats in the UK make their car seats for the whole of Europe because R44 and R129 are European regulations. Now, R44 was first introduced in the early 1980s. Most car seat companies have decided not to sell R44 anymore or not to manufacture them because that regulation is no longer legal in Europe. However, because of Brexit, you can still buy R44 seats in the UK, but most of the seats you will find in the shops now are R129. So I would just like to explain the differences between the two regulations. R44 seats were weight-based, so they had 5 set weight groups, group 0 up to 10 kilos, all the way up to group 3 up to 36 kilos. And in that regulation, children or babies could face forward in group 1, which started at 9 kilos. This is a picture of my youngest son. He was 5 months old in this picture and already weighed 9 kilos. Obviously much too young to face forward, but legally that was allowed. So in R129, children have to be at least 15 months or 76 centimetres, or actually it's both, it's 15 months and 76 centimetres tall to legally be allowed to face forward. Now obviously that's still far too small and far too young. We want babies or children to rear face for at least 4 years, if not longer, but all R129 car seats, or most of them, do rear face up to 105 centimetres, and that's about 4 years. So there are 5 main differences between R44 and R129. Like I said a second ago, one of the differences is R129 seats are height-based, whereas R44 seats had set weight groups. The height-based seats will all have different height limits depending on the type of seat that it is, but they do also still have a weight limit. So you do need to check the orange label on the back of the seat carefully to make sure that you don't exceed that weight limit, because some children can actually outgrow a seat by weight before they've reached the height limit. So it's important to keep an eye on your child's weight as well as their height. Under R44, children were allowed to face forward, or babies I should say, at just 9 kilos, regardless of their height and regardless of their age. And 9 kilos, as I said earlier, can be as young as about 5 or 6 months. R129 seats are not allowed to be used forward facing before the baby is at least 15 months and measures 76 centimetres in height, and it doesn't take minimum weight into account. One of the other differences is that R44 seats didn't have compulsory side impact testing and R129 seats do, so you will see additional side impact blocks on those seats and side impact inserts on infant carriers. Another difference is the crash test dummies. R44 used P dummies, and those dummies were very, very basic and only moved backwards and forwards and only had 4 sensors. The R129 regulation uses Q dummies, and they are far more advanced. They move laterally as well as backwards and forwards, and they have 32 sensors. So they replicate the human body far more accurately to show what will happen to a child's body in a car crash. And another difference is the compatibility with the cars, which means any i-size car seat will fit into any i-size compatible car without checking the fit lists for compatibility. A lot of older cars, like this one from 2004, do have ISOFIX. You can see it quite clearly down here, but there is no label on the upholstery anywhere to indicate that ISOFIX is present. So this is not an i-size car, although it does have ISOFIX. From 2016 onwards, some cars have i-size compatible seating. This is a Skoda Kodiaq from 2020, and if you look closely at the ISOFIX logos, you will see that not only is there an ISOFIX symbol, but it's got a letter I next to it as well, and that means that this car is i-size compatible. And here is another example of a car with i-size compatible seats. This one is from 2016. And this is my car, a Citroën Grand C4 Picasso from 2016, which, although it does have ISOFIX in all 3 seats in the second row, as you can see by these little white logos, if you look very closely, you will see that they just say ISOFIX, but no I. So that means that this car is not i-size approved. Not having i-size approval doesn't mean that you're not allowed to use an i-size car seat in any of these cars. Any ISOFIX car seat will fit almost every car that has ISOFIX, even one as old as the one in the earlier clip from 2004. It just means that in these cars you may have to check the seat and the car for compatibility, whereas in an I-size approved vehicle that's not necessary, as they are guaranteed to fit. When R129 was first introduced in 2013, the first phase was known as I-size, and this was ISOFIX car seats, either infant carriers up to height limits somewhere between 75 and 85 centimetres, as well as seats for older children up to 4 years old that go up to 105 centimetres. So these are just two examples of I-size car seats. This is the Britax Baby-Safe infant carrier, and this is the B-Safe Easy Go. A lot of these are modular systems where the infant carrier and the bigger seat for older children fit on the same base. So I'm now going to just remove this seat from its base. And then this is the larger seat up to 105 centimetres that fits on the same base and lasts up to 105, which is around 4 years old. And this is the Britax system, which is basically very similar. So I've removed the infant carrier from the base, and now the larger seat fits onto the same base for an older child. So these are two examples of R44 and R129 infant carriers. This is a Maxi-Cosi Pebble and this is a Britax Baby-Safe iSense. And one of the main differences between R129 and R44 is the introduction of side impact testing, which meant that they have had to give the car seats more padded, more supportive inserts for small babies. And you'll see that here. These side impact blocks that are in the cushion are completely absent from this car seat. So these older car seats, you just put the baby in, but the sides were not really supported at all. And with these ones, the baby is a lot more cocooned. And as the baby grows, obviously those inserts are removed, but R129 infant carriers are a lot more supportive for newborns. And here are two more examples of the differences between R44 and the same seat's R129 version. This is the Joy Spin 360 and this is the iSpin 360. Now, as you can see, this one has inserts, and unfortunately I've left the insert for this in the house. I haven't got them with me today, but the main thing I wanted to show in this clip was the fact that there is no side impact protection here, but on this one you've got this bit sticking out at the side, and that is your side impact protection block. And all R129 seats have to have some form of side impact protection. You won't see bits that stick out like this on all car seats, and the ones that don't show it will have something built into the shell, but they've all got to pass a side impact protection test. And then in 2017, the second phase of R129 was introduced, and that was Highback booster seats. Now this is an older R44 Britax-Kid fix, and this is the new R129 Britax-Kid fix. Not a huge amount of difference, but one of the differences that you will see is this colouring of the seatbelt guide. On the R44 seats, they were always red, and on the R129, they are now green. And then in December 2018, R12903 was introduced, and that was belt-fitted car seats. So these are not I-size, because one of the I-size requirements is that car seats have to fit into an invisible box that they call an envelope, and that's a certain size specification, which means that I-size car seats will all fit I-size cars. Belt-fitted seats don't come under that size, although they are still all 44 centimetres wide, but they're not I-size. So there are a few differences between R44 and R129 belt-fitted car seats. So to start with, I'm just going to show you this one. This is the Joy Steady. Now this is the old R44 and this is the new R129. And immediately you'll see on the side of this one, you've got blue guides as well as red lower down for the seatbelt to go through. R129 seats are only allowed to have one seatbelt path. Now the Steady was lucky that it already only had one seatbelt path. But if you look at this one, for instance, this is the Joy Stages. And when this seat is belt fitted rear facing, the belt goes a completely different way to when you sit it up and it's going forward facing. And under R129, that's no longer allowed. You're only allowed to guide the belt through one path. And also, the Stages is wider than 44 centimetres, which is another reason why they haven't brought out an R129 version. But coming back to the Steady has one belt path for forward as well as rear facing, and you can see it's exactly the same seat, but this one now has green seatbelt guides, whereas this one has blue for rear facing and red for forward facing. So I'm just going to install the two versions of the Joy Steady in my car to show the differences. So here you've got red for forward facing, blue for rear facing, but you've got one slot here which is exactly the same on the R129 version. So the seatbelt just goes through that one slot, it comes out of the other side and buckles in. Pull the belt tight, and then it locks into this clip, which is both red and blue because you use the same clip whether the seat is forward facing or rear. So this is the R44 Steady, and I'm now halfway through installing the R129 version of the Joy Steady, which is exactly the same except all the bits are green. So this clip that was blue and red on the other one is all green on this one, and then you've got the hook on the top here that was blue on the other one and is green here. And this is the Joy Every Stage, and this is another example of a seat that only had to have minimal changes made to it to pass the R129 regulation. So this is the R44 version, and if you look closely you'll see on the side that there are blue seatbelt guides as well as red to indicate forward and rear facing, and the seatbelt locking clip on the back here is blue. Now if you look at this one, you'll see that there is actually nowhere for the seatbelt to go through. So this seat is no longer allowed to be used forward facing. So it's rear facing only. The belt goes through the same path as it did on the old version. The clips on the back to lock the belt are green. And the old Every Stage was already 44 centimeters wide. So the new Every Stage R129 is exactly the same, apart from the few changes that I just mentioned. And with the introduction of R12903 in December 2018 came the change of colour in the seatbelt routing guides. So on the new R129 seats, all belted seats have green guides, as you can see on this Britax Baby-Safe. Now this older Britax Baby-Safe, exactly the same car seat, has blue seatbelt guides. That doesn't mean that this is not an I-size car seat. The seatbelt guides were only changed to green in 2018, but I-Size and R129 came out in 2013. So all the first infant carriers that were belt fitted, that were also allowed to be belt fitted as well as used on an Isofix base, had blue guides because that's what R44 had always had. So if I just move this one out of the way, this is a Maxi Cozy Pebble, which is an R44 belt fitted infant carrier. And as you can see here, it's got blue guides for the seatbelt as well as on the back. And that brings me to the biggest category of belt-fitted car seats, which are rear-facing up to what was 25 kilos under R44 and is now 125 centimeters and 36 kilos under R129. Now, it's unlikely that a child is ever going to reach the weight limit in those car seats because the height limit is still 125. 125 is an average 7-year-old, whereas 36 kilos is an average 11-year-old. So children will just grow out of this car seat by height without needing to worry about the weight too much. So this Mini Kid 2, unlike the Joy seats that I showed earlier, they couldn't just make a few changes to the existing Mini Kid in order for it to pass R129 because the width is above 44 centimeters. So this one is a little bit narrower. And one other difference is the belt clips. So the Mini Kid 2 has blue clips on the sides here. And on the Mini Kid 4, obviously they've done away with the blue, you've now got a green clip in the middle. So while there are some differences between R129 and R44 that make R129 better in terms of rear facing for longer and side impact testing and things like that, it doesn't mean that all R44 seats were bad, because this one, the Axkid Mini Kid 2, has passed the Swedish Plus test. It rear faces at 25 kilos, which is about 6 years old. It already had side impact here in this block. So there are some car seats that are now no longer allowed to be sold because they didn't have any side impact. They forward faced way too early. They were too wide. They just didn't meet the criteria. But not all R44 car seats are bad car seats, as you can see in this one. This one is basically as good as this one. It just meets slightly different criteria. So just to summarize the main differences between R44 and R129. R44 is weight-based, which allows forward facing from 9 kilos, and R129 is height-based, so seats don't have set weight groups, they all have their own height limits, and they don't allow forward facing before 15 months and 76 centimeters. R129 seats used more advanced crash test dummies that give a far more accurate picture of what happens to the child's body in a crash. R129 seats, or I-size R129 seats, are compatible with newer vehicles which have I-size approved seats in the car, so they just click in and you don't need to look at vehicle lists. And R129 testing includes a compulsory side impact test. Now, as well as those differences, I-size was also introduced to make things more foolproof, because the tests that we do show that at least 80% of all car seats are installed incorrectly. Some of that is just due to user error, but some of that is due to the fact that car seats can be quite complicated. And what I-size and R129 aim to do is to make car seats as easy to understand and use as possible to minimize misuse. And one of those things brings me to this car seat. This is the Axkid Move. This is the R44 Move, and this is the R129 Move Kit. The R44 one, the Axkid Move, is an example of a car seat with a 3-thread harness. So in order to alter the height on this car seat, you need to take this, you unhook it from behind, let me just turn it round. You unhook the straps from here, they are then pulled through from the front, you then need to thread them back in through a different hole and attach them again at the back. And you can see that it's fairly easy to get that wrong, to get it twisted, to get it tangled up and everything. So re-thread harnesses like those are no longer allowed under R129, and what all R129 seats have is a headrest that pulls up and the harness just slides up with it. So it's very easy to adjust the height on these car seats to make sure that the harness is always at the correct height, level with the child's shoulders. Now R129, although that's been around since 2013, for 10 years, both regulations were available. So you may well have bought an R44 car seat very recently, because that regulation was only discontinued last September in 2023. So you don't need to worry, you don't need to buy new car seats just because you have an R44. Those seats are still legal and will still be legal for a long time to come. It's just that you cannot buy new ones in the shops anymore. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and I'll see you soon.